welcome to a little session on how to take care of your bike. My name is Dwayne. I'm a wellness instructor at SAS Polytech. And so it's spring, the bike's coming out of the shed, and a bike that is just a little finicky, not quite working right, often stays in the shed and just doesn't get ridden. So what I want to show you is a few tips and tricks on how to take any bike and just tune it up a little bit so it works a little bit better. If it works better, it's more fun to ride, and off you go. So I'm not going to show you how to wash the bike because there's a whole long process and we only have half an hour. But I'll tell you a little bit about kind of basically how to wash a bike. So number one question I get is, can I use a pressure washer to wash my bike? And the answer is yes, but there's a whole bunch of parts on the bike that you don't want to use the pressure washer on. So the nice colored frame that gets all muddy, you can use a pressure washer on that, that's fine. But any place where there's a bearing of any kind, you don't want to use the pressure washer on that. Water will get in and wreck your bearing. So rather than drag the pressure washer out for 2 minutes of work, the best plan is just get some nice soft flowing water out of your garden hose and a soapy bucket and something fuzzy. Okay, so two things you need is like a nice big cloth to get the big parts. And then if you have some old toothbrushes, which you should have, right? Keep these. I don't throw any toothbrushes away. They are useful for all this. And that helps you kind of scrub all the parts that the big, soft, fluffy thing. So scrubbing, rinsing, scrubbing, rinsing. That's kind of the best way to generally wash the bike. Now, we're not talking about any of the important kind of mechanical parts, just generally the whole thing. The only reason you'd actually want to wash your bike thoroughly is if it's full of mud, or you generally work hard in the heat and sweat all over it. So you sweat, it falls on the bike, and it kind of seeks into all the little nooks and crannies, and then it actually corrodes things. So if you're a sweater and you're riding in the hot weather, those are the two reasons why you'd want to wash the bike down. Now, once you've washed it, you need to do the rest of the important stuff right away, because that water will cause corrosion on your chain, and a corroded chain isn't going to work as well as it's supposed to. So what I want to focus on is how to clean what I call the important parts, the drivetrain. So your front chain rings, the rear cassette or cog set, or your gears. These would be gears. This would be your chain rings. Okay, different bikes. Some bikes have 3 chain rings and 7 gears, or 1 chain ring and 12 gears, doesn't matter. And then the chain. The chain is really, really important to clean that. And then secondarily, there's a few things around the shifters or the derailleurs that need to be cleaned, okay? So once everything is washed off, what I'll do is take my air compressor and blow all the water off, dry it off as much as possible, and then boom, right to the cleaning part, okay? So the washing part I might do on my bike, I don't know, once a month, but the cleaning part, what I want to show you today, I'll do like 2-3 times a week, just because I ride. You should clean it probably, I don't know, every couple of hours that you ride. And what you're going to find out is if you do that, if you clean it often, the cleaning process is way faster. Just like with anything, right? You clean yourself once every week. It's a long cleaning process, right? So I want to show you a couple tools that are really useful, but then I'm going to show you other ways to make this work. So one of the most useful tools you can use for chain cleaning is one of these little reservoir deals, and it's got scrubby wheels on the inside, okay? So you fill this up with chain cleaner, and it's got a top piece to it, and it clips on, and now I just run the chain through it, almost like a little mini dishwasher I attach to the chain. So that's really convenient, maybe 20-30 bucks from a bike shop. But if you want to save your money and not bother, again, we're back to a cloth, and I would recommend like a terry cloth type cloth, something with some softness and thickness to it, so the fibers can get into places. And then right back to the toothbrush, okay? And then a really good degreaser. So there's a few on the market. I mean, you can probably get a jug of official bike degreaser from a bike shop for a lot of money, and you think, is it worth it? I'm not sure. I've never done it, although what I get is from MEC, and it's just kind of a cost-effective approach. and then you can also take a little bit of dish soap and some water, and you've got it, right? That's your degreaser. So you take your little container of soap and water, and you start with, making your rag wet, nice and wet, and then you just start wiping the chain off, okay? So obviously that's working, right? I purposefully avoided cleaning this bike for the last 2 days, just so I could show you like before and after stuff. So I rode this bike 2 more times past when I should have cleaned it, and today was one of those days, and it wasn't shifting very well for me today, so it was starting to bug me. And if it keeps bugging me, and if I didn't know how to do all this stuff, eventually this bike just gets leaned up against the garage wall. Okay, so this is where you actually want to spend some time and get a little picky with this. If you do it regularly, it doesn't take very much time, but you actually want to take this toothbrush and scrub it all the way along, okay? I want those long fibers to get into the chain, okay? And that's how you get the chain thoroughly cleaned. So it might take me another, 30 seconds to do the full chain like that. And then I'll go back to my cloth, right? And I will keep doing that until it stops making the chain dirty. So just to give you a quick promo shot on how slick these chain cleaners are, because they really are the way to go. If you ride regularly and you just want to take care of your chain, and I'll tell you why this is so important. Obviously, I'm talking a lot about the chain, so there's a reason. All right, so you click it on, right? And now I just have this. This probably makes a ton of noise on the mic. I'll talk when I'm not doing it. It's just my little mini dishwasher cleaning the chain. There, so 20 seconds of that is the same as 3 minutes with a toothbrush, and it's going to be way more effective, okay? All right. So it's not perfectly clean yet, so I'm going to rub it with this, okay? All right, so now for the most part, that chain is clean. Now I want to clean off my gears, okay? So I'm just going to bring you over here with me for a second. So that might not look too dirty. So my gears are kind of a light color, but you can see little bits of grease stuck to it, okay? Well, that grease is gonna collect dirt, okay? And that dirt is gonna make my chain sound squeaky and horrible and uncomfortable. It's also gonna wear it out and wreck it, okay? And it's gonna make it so the gears aren't gonna shift very well. So what I like to do is get my chain into my lowest gear here. And if you don't have a setup here to hang your bike from, all you have to do is lean your back tire up against the wall with the bike at an angle so it kind of sits there. Or if you have a notch in something, you can wedge your back wheel into it so the bike sits still. So all this can be done with the bike on the ground as well, okay? All right, so all my gears, this is just a different container, but it's just a degreasing solution. This could be water. This would be full of water with 3 squirts of dish detergent in it. That's going to work just fine. So I want to get this nice and wet. Okay. And this is where the toothbrush comes in again. Okay. So I'm just going to scrub this. This is exactly like brushing your teeth. This does not take very long. The only thing you kind of get good at with this, and you learn from experience, is that the toothbrush will spray this greasy crap all over the place. And if you're not really good at controlling where it's spraying, you'll wonder why your face looks the way it does, or the wall in your garage looks the way it does. So it just takes a little practice to control the spraying and flailing, okay? And this is something that's going to be done every time the chain gets cleaned. And trust me, yeah, I should have cleaned this a few days ago already. If this is done regularly, it does not take very much time. I've had people bring bikes to me and they said, hey, can you clean this for me? And it took me like 3 days of soaking and scrubbing and soaking and scrubbing. Well, obviously that's no fun. So I say, if I'm going to clean your bike for you, bring it back in 2 weeks, not 2 years. All right. So now what you need is a nice piece of cloth, not like the first rag I showed you. Okay, this soft terry cloth thing with all the loose fibers, that's good for most of the cleaning, but it is not going to work to get the gook that I just scraped out of here. Okay, this would be like more like a sheet material, like a linen, like a bed sheet. That's nice and smooth and kind of hard. So I fold it over and I just wedge it between each gear, and this is the same demonstration that the hygiene students use for brushing and flossing. Okay, that's all I'm doing here. So first I brushed it, and now I'm flossing it. I'm just flossing between each one of those gears. Oops. And if you have any sort of obsessive compulsive cleaning traits in your psyche, this is so much fun. So lately my bikes have been really clean, because one of the things that I do to combat stress is clean my bike. So my bikes are in very good working order these days. All right, I'm just gonna do a couple more here and then I'm gonna show you what it looks like. All right, so that's not all the gears, but most of them. And come over here with me. All right, so what used to be all greasy is now perfectly clean, okay? And we actually, with the toothbrush gets into this little groove on every little tooth, and that's important to get clean, okay? Perfect. All right, I should have warned you to close your eyes when I'm moving that camera around. Okay, so that's the chain, that's the gears. You also have these little bogey wheels back here, okay? I'll just quickly show you what that looks like. So these little bogies also collect grease, and there's also always crap on here. That has to be wiped off. What I'll do once every, maybe twice a season, is I'll take this whole assembly apart and clean them really thoroughly. But that's maybe not entirely necessary. I'll admit that might be just on one of those higher stress days. When I need something more to do on cleaning, I'll just take it all apart. But otherwise, I'm just going to take my cleaning rag again, squirt a little degreaser on it, and then just kind of squeeze the wheel and run it through. And that's it. If you, what was I going to say? Oh, if you miss one of these parts, like if you miss one of these things that's greasy, but you clean everything else, then your chain's going to get greasy quite quickly after when you start riding again. Okay. All right. We haven't cleaned the chain rings yet. So chain rings are basically the same idea. I tend to like to use the cloth that has more to it for the front, and I start off with basically that same process of flossing in between. Okay, and then I'll get the back side of the small chain ring. Okay, and then I'll move the chain onto the small chain ring. That gives me access to the big chain ring, and then I'll just spend some time scrubbing this. I honestly don't typically use the toothbrush on these chain rings. The nice fuzzy cloth works really well. Again, just slow, patient. Everything has kind of slightly sharp edges, so you know the cloth will kind of hook on things, but with a little bit of practice, you just learn how to efficiently clean all these parts off. Okay. All right. So that is the drivetrain that is the drivetrain cleaned. Okay. So the next thing is...
Dave, can you hear me?
Well, we can take questions at the end. We're just live
Okay,
on Facebook and recording this right now. So right near the end, we'll turn our recording off and I'll answer all the questions.
thank you.
All right, so lubricating the chain. This is why we spent so much time cleaning it. And this is why I've spent 15 minutes of this half-an-hour session on this. Because for anybody out there biking, what I've just shown you is the most important thing to do to make this whole system work really well, okay? All right, now lubricating. This is the one thing that I've seen more people do wrong than ever. It's really amazing. However, it's understandable, unless no one's shown you how to do this, you wouldn't know how, because what you're trying to lubricate isn't what you think you're trying to lubricate. All right, what you're trying to lubricate is the chain is made up of a bunch of rollers, and the lubrication only has to be on the inside of that roller, not the outside of the roller, not on your gears, not on your chain ring. You should be able to touch the chain after it's been lubricated and have a clean-ish hand, okay? So the idea of spraying WD-40 all over this would be like trying to stop your car with your foot on the ground outside. It's not a very good idea, and it's not going to work out very well. Having any extra lubricant on your drivetrain will just result in you collecting dirt, and dirt means this is going to wear out for you, and dirt's the opposite of what we want. We want this clean, okay? So now that I've got it all clean, this is how you lubricate it. For the most part, in Saskatchewan, you just want what's called a dry lubricant, okay? There's any bike shop will have any of them, and they're all fantastic. There's not a lot of differences. The differences come into play in more elite racing and performance end of things, okay? But a dry lubricant, because it's dry here. If you lived in Vancouver, you might want a wet lubricant. Living here, anywhere in Saskatchewan, you want a dry lubricant. And if it happens to be raining when you're riding, that's okay. This is still going to work just fine, okay? There's some kinds that are a little more finicky, so you want to look at the bottle. So this one I've got, this is actually my favorite one, but I have to apply it the night before. It has to dry, and then it's going to work better. So to quickly put it on and go, it's just going to collect dirt, and it's not going to work, okay? So now, having said that, this one that's my dry lubricant is actually empty. So I'm going to be putting on this other fancier one. So the real kind of slow process, if you have the time and you want to be picky and you like that idea, okay? And this might sound like I'm making this up, but truly the application is one tiny drop on every link, okay? So it'll take you 30 seconds to put lubricant on your whole chain. If you want to speed that up, you get good at having just a really gentle stream of lube come out, and then you turn your chain. And now your chain's lubricated, okay? But you're not done yet. Again, remember, you should be able to touch your chain and really not make you that dirty. So this is the part that's a little weird. You've now lubricated your chain. Now you're gonna wipe it all off, okay? You're gonna do this and wipe and wipe and wipe and wipe and wipe. Perfect. Now your chain's ready to go, okay? And you might think, well, how long is that gonna last? Well, if you put a little tiny bit of lubricant on, it might last you 5, 6, 7 hours of riding, okay? If you put a lot of lubricant on, after 2 hours of riding, it's collected dirt, and now it's doing more damage to your drivetrain than ever, okay? I'd rather have a chain on the dry side and have it kind of maybe squeaking by the end of the ride than having something that's too lubricated, okay? So that's the idea of how to lubricate, how to clean your drivetrain and lubricate it. With a little bit of practice, I'll admit when you first start doing this, it's messy, you've got stuff all over the place, your toothbrush trick got grease across your face, And it's like, oh, this is gross. But a little bit of practice, you get in the routine, and then you've got it going. Okay. Now, besides that, one of the things you always want to pay attention to is tire pressure. Okay. So the side of your tire will say how much pressure should be in the tire. Most of them, they're all within a similar range. If your tire is thick like this, somewhere between 30 and 50 pounds is going to be good to go. If it's a skinnier tire, like a road bike tire, 80 to 100 pounds is going to be good to go. You want to give that a squeeze or put your pump on it if there's a gauge, and check them at the beginning of every ride. And what I like to do is have a little travel pump with me. And the travel pump can actually replace, if you want to save money and hassle, like do you get a floor pump or do you get a little pump? Just get a little one. It doesn't work as well as a floor pump, but it still works and you can take it with you, okay? So check your tires to make sure that there's enough air in them, okay? And then there's something that I want to tell you. I just can't show you because all of my bikes that I have are all tubeless. And your more common bikes, they have tubes in the tires. And sometimes you might find, if you look at your stem, you might find that it's kind of at a funny angle, okay? That just means that at some point, the tire was down in pressure and then the whole tire turned a little bit on the rim. And now your stem is at a goofy angle. If you leave it that way, eventually the tube is going to wear a hole right by the stem because it's got pressure on it. So what you want to do is take all the air out of your tire and then just grab your wheel, grab your tire, and just kind of try to shimmy the tire back to where it was, and you'll know when it's right, when your stem is straight, and you're good to go. Then pump it back up, and off you go, okay? All right, this bike has disc brakes, and there's still a lot of bikes out there that have the rim brakes, okay? So I'll tell you a little bit about, again, I don't have a bike with rim brakes, but I'll just do this and we'll all understand what I'm talking about, okay? So these rim brakes can be, they can just get out of tune constantly. By the way, another part you might want to clean is that whole surface that your brake touches, okay? Clean that off, your brakes are gonna work better. All right, so what can go wrong with these brakes? Well, they can, over time, they can get like off kilter. So when you look at it, one brake pad is closer to the wheel than the other. So if it's rubbing and it's bugging you, there's going to be a little tiny screw on one side of it, and you can play with that. You can turn the screw, and it can take that whole mechanism and shift it one way or the other. So that's a really simple little fix. If you're worried, this is a general theme here. When you're twisting and turning any of the adjustments on your bike, you might think, well, which way do I turn it? I don't know. I mean, I kind of do, but usually I turn it one way. No, that's getting worse. So I just turn it the other way. Okay. So that's kind of how you want to adjust that. If the brakes aren't grabbing hard enough, so the cable is stretched. So now when those brake pads squeeze, no matter how hard you squeeze the handle, they're not squeezing the rim hard enough. They're starting out too far away from the rim. Okay. So what you want to do is somewhere near your brake handle, where the cable inserts to the handle, there's right on the cable, there's going to be a little adjustment knob, and they all look the same. So let me show you what this one looks on the back of my setup here. All right. So this little piece turns. Whoops. All right. Doesn't turn easily, but it does turn. And that's how I adjust my shifting. But it's also how you would adjust your brake levers, and that little twisty thing is going to be close to your brake lever, okay? And so you can try turning that. And so what I do is I turn it a couple times and then look at the brakes. And the brakes they will have either gotten further apart or they would have gotten closer together. And you can play around with that to see if you can get your brakes working better for you, okay? Something else to do a quick check on, this is in the topic of maybe safety, is you can, if you've got the cantilever brakes, and so you look at the wheel as it passes the brake, or if you have disc brakes, you can just put your finger really close to the wheel and then spin the wheel, okay? And so the wheel should be going past your finger with the same distance all the way around. So as the wheel goes around, if you see at one point the wheel goes whoop, 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 like that, that means your wheel is either bent or you've got a spoke that's loose or broken, okay? Honestly, the wheel can work quite fine. You might not want to take a gnarly downhill with that wheel, but if your wheel, as it spins, has a wobble to it, that might be something you want to take into the bike shop and have them look at, okay? So that's something to do a check on. If your bike has disc brakes, so this bike has disc brakes, and sometimes they start to rub. So I'll just grab the wheel and turn it, and this one here is tuned perfectly, so if I stop talking, it's nice and quiet, and the wheel just turns and turns and turns forever. On some models of bikes, the disc brakes aren't so smooth and perfect, so you might grab the wheel and spin it, and you hear a rubbing noise. If you hear a rubbing noise, but the tire still turns fairly freely, then that's good. Don't worry about the rubbing. If the tire turns well, you're good to go. If the tire doesn't turn well, then you want to do an adjustment. And so this is what most people maybe are really hesitant to do, is to actually adjust their disc brakes. But there's a real easy hack with it, okay? So my disc brake assembly attaches to my fork. There's 2 bolts here. So all I do is, wrong wrench. All you do is loosen each of those hex bolts, okay? And then squeeze your brake, okay? So now I've loosened this by squeezing the brake. It automatically centered things. I keep the pressure on. I keep squeezing, and then I tighten, and most things on bikes you can tighten quite vigorously. Okay, now we'll see if I screwed it up or if I made it better. All right, so now it makes a sound and I made it worse. So I have to go back and retune that. All right. 9 times out of 10, that'll work really well. And obviously that time it didn't. So welcome to Bike Tuning 101. Okay. That's how you check the wheels and tires and brakes and take care of your drivetrain. You might want to, if you're checking things for tightness, you can just find any and every nut and bolt that's on these things and just give it a quick little turn. If you can turn it without too much force, it was loose, turn it, now it's tight. If you're checking your pedals, a little tip, the threads on your right pedal are normal threads. Threads on the left pedal are backwards threads. So if you're trying to take your pedals off or change pedals or check if they're tight, just know that the one on the right turns right and the one on the left turns the other way. All right. I think I've covered what I wanted to get across to you guys. So we're going to turn the live stuff off in the recording, and then I know there's a bunch of questions popping up there, so we'll handle those.